Hi, and welcome to RealClearFetish Talks RealClearPlay, a podcast that dives into kink, sober life, and everything in between. This is the premiere of Season 9, and as you can see in the surroundings, I'm now in my new place. Very happy, very settled, and I'm just ready to get going with Season 9. And on this premiere episode, we are going to the States to talk to LTJ Reads. How are you?
I'm great. I'm over here in Austin, Texas.
And how's life over there? How's the weather?
Okay, well, Texas is hot. We're in a cooler time. It's spring, so we're getting, getting up to the high 80s, low 90s. It usually gets up to like 2 degrees less than hell. So it's about that.
So, like with every episode I do of this podcast, we start with four standard questions and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
I'm up for it.
What do you prefer I call you? Names, pronouns, and title.
LTJ Reads, he, him, and I am your very first Mr. Austin Eagle in 2024.
Oh, fantastic.
So
Congratulations on
we're
that.
putting a new eagle on the map now, and it's been great. It's been wonderful being a part of being the George Washington of something.
Well, that's fantastic. Being the first is always great, and you get to set the standard as well.
It's crazy when you don't have a template to follow. So there was a lot of trial and error, but we got it right eventually.
Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I always tell people I am a bisexual, pansexual, demisexual, sapiosexual. So I am very complicated. I joined the leather community I've been in the leather community about 2.5 years. I was really attracted to the presence of community and activism while also feeling empowered through leather and community. And so I'm relatively still young in terms of my leather years, but I was fortunate enough to have competed in Mr. Texas 2023, and I kind of stepped on the first contest stage. And I think that was just kind of my introduction to everybody because when I first came into the community, people really didn't know what I was about. And I think in that moment, I proved myself. And so I was able to come back around, and with a few months, they had actually opened the Austin Eagle around the time that the Austin Kink Weekend 2023 was going on. And so later on September, well, they revealed to me later this summer that, hey, they were like, we're going to do a title. So I was like, well, I'm going to run for it and just kind of showcase the growth I had since the last competition. And so I was able to do that. I won the title. I was the first. I focused a lot on visibility of us and try to do it as much international visibility as I could. I started Throwing Light last January, and we're getting ready to hit 100 episodes. Throwing Light is kind of like my big brainchild here that's snowballing really quickly. The tagline for Throwing Light is if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right. And I usually record these shows, usually on Sundays, but I take Wednesdays, Tuesdays. I've been doing special interviews. We're really IML focused. I just shot an episode where I was bringing visibility to the Australian contestants this year at IML because they're bringing the most ever. So we just got done doing that episode. So, I am a community person. I'm about mental health. My name is LTJ Reads. I read people, sorry, I read books, not people. And so I am Throwing Light came out of this visioning of a community where instead of us throwing shade, we're throwing light, we're uplifting. And especially right now, I just don't have time for it. I don't think our community has time for it. And I'll get pushback every now and then, like, well, what's wrong with throwing shade? Because I'm like, there's a difference between being playful with friends and throwing shade in a way that you understand and you're dynamic, but we're talking about hurting other businesses. We're talking about defamation of people. We're talking about these types of things in our community that don't help us succeed. And if we're working as our own enemy, we're never going to progress as people that deserve to have the beauty of the right to live the way they want to. So we're never going to achieve that beauty if we are throwing marbles at each other. So my whole vibe coming out as a leatherman and then, getting the title, I got to compete in International Mr. Leather last year, which is a mind blow. There's people that have been in this community over a decade that still never stepped on that stage,
Mm.
or that have stepped on that stage. And I have IML siblings ranging from 24 to in their 60s. So that's been an amazing thing. But stepping on that stage empowered my work even more, and it's just been a lot easier to get people on board to be a part of this. Because I did an interview this past weekend. I went to a clothing optional camp to do what I call NPR, which is Naked People Reading. So I've been doing this, and so I brought that over to the camp, and we did like kind of a group thing of that, and that's been really great. So I found my niche, I guess, as the first Miss Frost Eagle, using a lot of my own personal talents. And I think the new ideas and create excitement for the community. But we have a lot of work to do. But this is kind of like how I started and where I am now. So.
There's a lot in there to kind of dive
Yeah.
into. Absolutely. I asked this question to everyone. Completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker?
I am a social drinker, but I am actually trying to work on my own sobriety group called Survivors, and it's just going to deal with relative addictions because alcohol is not something I desire. It's not something I don't really drink at my house. The only
Mm.
time I do drink is if I go up to the bar to be social. So it's very much a social thing, but I
Mm.
used to be a crystal meth addict. So, uppers and drugs like that tend to be where I draw the line and where I'm focusing on it. I'm more open-minded about alcohol and, well, I'm more open-minded about marijuana than
Hmm.
I am alcohol. I'm a little bit more, because my dad used to be an alcoholic, so I've seen the horrors of alcoholism. And I
Mm.
just haven't seen that with marijuana. But, we're in the United States and I'm in Texas, which is a very conservative state, big conservative state, and the conservatism in this state is mean. And what I mean by that is that most of what the outside perspective of what people are seeing about the United States has to deal with these rural communities that somehow have been empowered by someone coming into the White House and hijacking. Basically, our government has been hijacked by a cult that is led by number 47. I do not say his name ever. I don't want to let shit come out of my mouth. And I call him number 47. And think he is the antithesis. I think he is the opposite of everything that's good about the world. It's unfortunate that we have this person in power. A lot of us are apologetic right now about this. Doing this interview is so great because we need to shed more light on Americanism that is practical,
Mm.
that is relatable. And right now, as maybe and the rest of the world, our social rights have just literally been stripped away with pin marks. The most carelessness of American history is happening right now. We
Mm.
have careless people that want to be wealthy, and they will go to any means to control the world and do all that. My concern, though, as a leatherman here in the United States, and I'm excited to go connect with my international family at IML. I started working on a book, my first book actually, called American Like Me. And my goal is that if people looked over to the United States and saw MAGA, I wanted to be the opposite of that. I wanted my flag to raise and be like, hey, don't look over there, look over here. I'm the type of American you want to work with. I'm the type of American that is in this country. And we have now let delusion and a false reality run rampant in our country. Everybody knows we're in a unique situation, but we have a very tough road here, and I don't think as Americans we've ever been in this position before to this degree and such overwhelmingly. So I really want to build compassion for us Americans that don't want this. I can see how this administration is agitating the world. And if our leather community can continue to revolt against that, I think we will succeed. But it is a little upsetting to me now sitting you as American, and it feels shameful that we even have some people concerned about coming to the country to be at IML because of the things that are happening to our community.
I've seen a couple of European titles actually going, do you know what? We're not going to go.
Yes.
Either they're worried about being detained in the airport and sent back. I
I know,
haven't
I
spoken.
know specifically, but I don't want to say specifically what who's pulling out. But
Yeah,
I respect their decision. We do hope here that we can try to keep that international and global unity because we are now in a place where we actually need the rest of the world to sympathize with us.
yeah,
And I know that's hard because I think what I would perceive as the outside perspective is that what was elected into office, which I would say I do believe the election was stolen and there was manipulation. You have somebody going on talking about rigging elections and all this, and all of a sudden this person wins the election and all of that just goes away. There's no, so we don't really have anybody advocating us as a strong leader right now to just call what that is, the BS that what it is. We've got this guy going around saying he's a Christian, and people just accept that stuff at face value, and it's the most ridiculous thing ever. But I think our community, we need to figure out ways to sidestep them using religion against us. We need to sidestep them trying to stereotype us. I know that we are a very sexualized community, but I think in times for our survival right now, we need to prioritize where that fits in our life. And I don't think that we should be leading with sex as Americans right now. I understand the need for safety and awareness, but it is activism time, and we need to focus on that.
yeah. I think there is like a sense of there needs to be activism almost everywhere at the moment. Like the UK now is now dealing with the Supreme Court ruling around what makes a woman, what is the definition of a woman, and it's absolutely mind-boggling. So we are like here in the UK, we're very embarrassed by that ruling. It's under all because of course they very much said it goes neither one way or the other. No one's won. But because the loud majority of TERFs are just hitting down on, and it's going to be a massive problem. We now have a whole section of communities. I don't know which bathroom to use because the law says this. So there needs activism on the whole spectrum. And when I started the episode today, I was just like, okay, how long do we go before we start talking about what's going on in the States? As us looking from here and in, it just looks terrible. It looks terrible. So I very much sympathize that we have to focus on more the positive things and how we're going to make this work, how the next 4 years going to turn out, how can we minimize the damage.
We want all of you guys to stand against who's in power right now. We are
Oh,
not weird. We don't want you to give in. True or false. And the thing is that we have to deal with people constantly using the term fake news, so they dismiss everything. But let's say true or false. Is our current person president trying to influence your government to
is
change your LGBTQI place laws to trade? That is effed up. That is some fucked up shit. And I'm sorry, I don't even curse like that, but that is like
you
that
can
is
curse
so
all you want on this podcast. Go
well,
for it.
I'm just saying that's low down, dude. That's low down. And I just, we also had a situation where someone was deported incorrectly and they're not going to bring them back. Like, what the, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is not the America we're trying to, and what we've been trying to get out of our system is trying to come back in our system and in
Mm.
a much more toxic and a devastating way. And like I said, this really has to do with white nationalism and that combination of using
Mm.
Christianity to oppress people and make yourself superior to others. America, the United States is diverse. I just want to, in actual, we're not dealing with a very homogenous type of population in the United States. So waving a wand and saying, hey, all diversity programs are gone, this is going to hit us at some point to where we feel it. And that is where I think we have someone that thinks they're getting away with it, and I believe in karma, and all of this has to come ahead at some point, because if you keep unchecking somebody, they're going to keep being an asshole, and at some point the asshole is going to go too far, and he's not going to be able to recover from that, and he does turn people off, and people don't come back to him when they turn him off.
Absolutely. So, yeah, social drinker then.
Yeah,
That's
we
what
let
the
into all of
question
that, right?
was.
Sorry.
No,
But
it's fine. It's fine. Sometimes these type of things, this is what
yeah,
I've said several times on episodes. I don't know what these episodes are going to bring, what's going to come out, and sometimes these questions trigger something, and then we just run with it, and it has to be said, and we would have probably touched on it anyway at some point. So the last question is, what is clear play to you, and why is it important?
clear play. So we're
Yeah,
talking about sober play.
sober play. Yeah.
I have been doing erotic modeling and I try to use my sexuality in a way that engages people. And the way I'm selling myself is that you can't be with me if you are picking up drugs. You can't get a brain like this if you're picking up drugs. So, like I said, crystal meth is my number one, just
Mm.
there's no compromise for me for that, especially injecting it with needles. And I just find a lot of uppers to be problematic. We've got people dying from K and fentanyl is an issue and stuff like that. So I say it like this. I've taught a class on being sober and key. You don't do anything you would not do sober. And that's just kind of like where I'm at with that. And then don't be enticed by others to do things that you in your heart or gut know are not right for you. But we want to get this meth pandemic under control because I just feel like it's this really, really huge cancer, and we're not coming out, and we're coexisting with it, and that's what it's really frustrating instead of confronting it. And we do that with a lot of things. We don't confront them, we coexist with them. And I just don't feel like we're hardlining, especially those that inject others that are not a doctor or a nurse in our community. Those are sexual predators. How can we focus on the churches that have sexual predators, not drag shows, if we ourselves are not policing our own sexual predators? And
Yeah.
and you will be, and it's likely to be the victim of a predator if you're under the influence of drugs.
I've probably been in situations I didn't 100% consent to was that when I was high, and that's absolute something that's probably true. I just don't remember it very much.
Yeah,
But yeah, we are still grappling with dealing with the crystal meth epidemic over here, and it's still new for a lot of people really here. And it's so prevalent and it's so addictive. And it's not more than 2 days ago I talked with a friend who tried it and now is struggling with it
yeah.
already. And I was like, yeah, as soon as you get the taste, it's very hard to beat, especially when it merges with your sex drive.
I didn't want to ever introduce it. I introduced a couple of people through what was probably about 7 years of this. I could not. I got to a point where I was having finally my moral compass and my own integrity of how I want to carry myself got to me and was able to kind of wake me up. But I had regrets of introducing it to people. And I had a friend that literally, when we first met, before, I introduced him because I was high, but like we formed a friendship and we were around each other sober. And then all of a sudden, like the behavior started to change. He started to become sketchier. I had a dealer that lived close by him. He's driving the dealer's car around. And I'm just kind of, what's going on? So then he gets arrested 3 times. And I'm just kind of like, okay. So he ends up coming over my house, and this is when I'm still using or whatever. And he was trying to convince me that it was God's plan for him to end up in jail. And there was no like, I should stop drugs. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm here because I was supposed to meet such and such. And then you get out and you get caught again. But I felt guilty because that declined so quickly. It only took 6 months. And prior to that, he was a dancer, and I was just, and then younger people coming into my space and being now a community leader and wanting people to respect me and understand me. I can't do that. I
Mm.
can't do that. I can't be that person. That's not who I am. But there are people like that. There are several predators in all spaces. But again, I find meth to lead to a lot of predators, and I think it's a huge epidemic, and we're not talking about ending it.
Yeah, it's such a difficult drug because you want to support the people there, but trying to kind of convince them or talk them to actually seeking help can be so difficult. But like with any addiction, if they're not ready to stop, they're not ready to stop. Can I ask how long have you been not using crystal meth?
So my sober date of completely not using it is November of 2022. So I'll be reaching 3 years, so I'm about 2.5 years now. But my decide to start getting away from it date is August 2021. So I have like two dates. One is what I call like I'm getting sick of this date, and then a date of completely broken free from it. And so I just kind of, you have to make that decision that you want to stop. And I just think what helped me stop was getting sick of being alone and the aftermath and the calm downs and not being able to sleep, not being able to show up for people, not showing up for myself. And then, and honestly, I found the leather community within the waning of my addiction. And now this community fills all those areas I was trying to fulfill with drugs. I'm so fulfilled with the leather community and so
Mm.
full of it that I'm full of that. I'm full of love. I've got love. I don't need the drugs. And yeah, I mean I have that as part of my story. Is getting through that. So I don't know where we're going to go as a community if we're not trying to make sure we're as strong as we can be. And like I said, we're turning a blind eye. We know it's a problem, but and to go back to your point of, I was just talking about this yesterday, how people treat you when you're an addict. It's rare that people can come from the point of like, oh, let me understand. It's more like,
Mm.
oh, you're doing this. I don't know what to do. And I made up in my mind that I don't ever want someone, regardless of their addiction, to come to me for help and be like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this. You're doing, like, I'd be like, I want the starting point of conversation to be like, what is wrong? Are you okay? What
Mm.
happened? These are
Yeah.
the questions that we need to start with when we're dealing with addiction. Not like, oh, you're doing meth. Like, why are you like, like the people close to you can be the ones that hurt you the most. And sometimes the ones willing least to understand. So if you're going through that or you feel like you've been through that, I'm validating your feelings that people do need to do a better job of meeting people halfway. And I don't mean doing the drugs, I mean understanding, compassion, asking the right questions, like the why. And when I started focusing on the why and having other people only caring about the why, that helped me heal. And so there are a lot of people right now that are in addiction and nobody's asking the why question.
Yeah, I think, at least for someone who hasn't dealt with addiction, when they're looking in, they might just see a person that doesn't have the will to stop or wherever. But it's a question of asking them, why are you using? Is it loneliness? Is it mental health issues? Stuff like that. And a lot of people don't think about that when they haven't been in that situation. I feel like I've been on both sides of it because I grew up with an alcoholic in the house. So I had a very weird relationship with alcohol and a lot of anger around that. But then when I became an addict myself, I was just like, oh shit, I get it now. It's not that fucking easy. So it's yeah, like you say, it's meeting them where they're at, not necessarily telling them to stop, but it's just about, okay, what can we do next? What is the next step? What do you want to do next?
You can literally like fish somebody out of it if you care. You can be like, here, this is as far as I can come. I will extend you a hand to come in this direction.
Yeah,
But never go over, don't compromise your boundaries to go towards the
yeah,
problem. You want to
absolutely.
pull that person away from the problem. And so if you're having engaging conversations and you're asking them about them, they're going to come towards that. And we want to bring people away from addiction. And by doing that, we have to connect and understand and have compassion. Once people feel like they have compassion, they're more willing, they feel love and they feel they have a purpose and they feel like they have a reason to quit their addictions. If a person can't find a reason, like if we're given the energy of, oh, you're on your own. I don't know what to do. It's immediate rejection, and all you're going to do is make that person go further deep into it. And people want to be like, oh, you can't blame. No, it's like I said, everything's a communication's 50-50. It doesn't matter what you want to do in what arena. It is part of the person who loves the personal addiction again. And like you said, to if you love them, you're going to find a way to get
Yeah.
to them and get them back.
It's so important to show compassion because that is what we lack, and it's when people get into addictions, they're demonized by people who don't understand. And like you say, the
Exactly.
people closest to them, it's not that it comes from a place of malice, they just don't necessarily know how to tackle it, and that can hurt the person even more. I've mentioned on probably on previous episodes, my dad's reaction to my addiction was, well, I'm not going to be angry with you because that's not going to help you. And I was just like, you just met me at where I'm at, and he just did the right thing. But not every parent's going to react that way. But he had some tools in his experience to handle that situation, which was amazing.
That's
So at the start of the podcast, you mentioned you were bi, pan, demi, and what was the last one?
apiosexual.
I know what the first three ones are. I don't know what the last one is. Can
So it's
you?
intelligence. I find it like an intelligent person is a good way to get me. I am not attracted to small talk. I'm not attracted to vapid conversation. I'm not superficial. So it's hard for me to be fake. And but if I can, someone can meet me here and understand and we can see the world in the same way, that's a real connection when you connect with the brain. And I I would be straight honest with you. A lot of Americans turn me off as attraction because of how dumb they are. And I taught college English for about 5 years in the state of Louisiana where I was raised and stuff. And people would joke like, "Oh, did you ever hook up one of your students?" I'm like, no. Like when you're teaching people that are uneducated and ignorant, that becomes unattractive really quick, and it doesn't fulfill. Like, and not that I would even think about doing that. That's a job, and I care. But you have a lot of adamant queer people here that will even put on their grinder or their scruff profile, no Republicans, no MAGA, no this. And that's a hard line for people to compromise. I worked for gay Republicans in the South, and it was horrible. Because they're very much these are going to be your LGB without the T people for sure.
Yeah, yeah, we have those as well.
Here, so they are very misguided. They are puppets, and they can do some cruel things. I think what really one of the factors that made my addiction worse is that I was sexually assaulted while I was the first Pride president in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I was assaulted. It was a ordeal. It was in New Orleans, but anyways, when I got back to town, being a community leader and a public figure, I was told, "Hey, you got to come out to the community and explain to people. You got to tell everybody you were raped, basically." And I'm like, this is like 6 days after come getting back. So there was no time
Nice.
to process trauma or anything like that. So I tell everybody that, I was going to a trip to New Orleans on my birthday and somehow I encountered the wrong person and they used a needle and drugged me, right? All this kind of stuff. I get this email the next day from a representative of the gay Republicans in town or whatever. And they're like, "Hey, I want to have a meeting with you. The community has some concerns." And I'm just like, at that time, I couldn't say no. Like, I'm a community leader and we're trying to raise money. I raised $100,000 in that environment, which is pretty impressive. But
Hmm.
I go meet this person. We're sitting having coffee, and he's like, immediately, he starts with the beginning of the conversation. He was like, "I just want to come and have this conversation and tell you that on behalf whatever they call their gay Republican, we believe that you put yourself in that situation and you deserved it." And so I'm sitting here and I just had somebody tell me that I deserve to be raped. And then I still served these people for like 6 more months. And they wanted to be involved in things I was doing. But I think that really was the spiraling of hanging on to anything that resembled me because I didn't want to be me at that point. I
Hmm.
didn't want to be somebody that was here to be hurt, to be raped, all that. I didn't want to deal with that. But that comment, the way people treated me, that traumatized me for life, and I'm still in therapy for those things. But do I hold a grudge? A little bit. I do. I do. And I'm a Scorpio, and it's really hard not to hold grudges. But like, it's just like it's that Republican, that gay Republican group. It just I can't. It's really hard, and you can do like the things we say to people can affect their sobriety, and that's true. And if you're especially saying hurtful things, it's easy for me. In my head, it was like run away, just run away. And that's what I did for like 5 years. I did meth and just disappeared because I didn't want to be existing. And that's true.
I'm so sorry you've experienced that, both the assault and that reaction from someone, especially a whole supposedly community group.
Right. A whole
Uh,
community. You're
yeah,
right.
I'm a little bit lost for words. That's just
It's
terrible.
I tell this and I hate bringing it up because it affects
No,
people more than
no,
it
no, no, no,
affects
no,
me.
no. Do not hate bringing it up because it's so bloody important. We talk about these things. The amount of stories I hear, I deal with some of our harm reduction charities here in London, Controlling Chemsex, London Friend, all these, and I hear stories again and again and again. They meet up with the wrong person, they get injected, and 4 days later, they're just, yeah, in hospital. So,
I think at this point,
so
the
important.
thing, what I mean is that more, I'm not hurt by it like it used to hurt me, but I see
Hmm.
it hurt other people when I tell that story.
It would be weird if I didn't react to it.
That's a good point, right? Unless you're a
Um,
sociopath. If you're a sociopath, maybe.
yeah, but no, it's those type of stories are hard to talk about, but so important as well because it is like if you do go for a hookup, if it is a chill out, make sure that people know where you are, who are you with, have a network. I'm not going to tell them not to do that, but do you trust this person? Can you send me the names and the phone numbers, blah blah blah, so you know where people are, and that's really important.
Doing drugs with strangers, you're taking a huge
Yeah.
risk.
Oh, I
Don't,
put myself in
yeah.
dicey situations so many times, and I'm lucky that I've gotten out. I would say in almost a whole piece without too much damage. It's terrible. It's terrible. So what you say in 2000 and 2021, that was kind of when you had enough. Was there anything that like kind of triggered that like, okay, enough is enough?
I had gotten a really great job. I was able to do things, and I was, one of the biggest factors of going through. I had so many service industry jobs when I was going through my addiction in the 2010s. So keeping a job, and finally it was a breaking the pattern moment, and it was like you now have a job that you can receive money to do the things that really matter to you. Do you want to fuck that up? Okay, you've made no friends, no friends. I have run into people that are also now sober, and we can share stories. But I did not achieve anything from addiction. The only thing that it did help is that it did make my parents have to determine if they were going to grow up to have a relationship with me. So as they saw how bad the addiction was, I think it made my mom and just have to determine if loving me was more important than some of her beliefs. So we've come a long way. So it'd be hard to say, God, man, addiction, but my story happened, addiction happened to me. And, like I said, every time you tell your story, someone's listening to the story right now, and I'm going to help them. So by just telling the story, a lot of people don't make it through. And I just want to be encouraging for those that might need a little bit more strength.
We definitely need more role models, open role models that talk about their struggles and so on. And some of the feedback I get with people who know who I am and know my story, and I sometimes go a little bit like when people come up and it's like, are you Ralph? Do you do this, that, isn't it? And it's like, yeah, that's me. It's like, oh, I'm a huge fan, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, I don't know what to do with that, but fine, okay. I'm very bad at the whole patting myself on the back for a good thing, but I enjoy doing this and I know it reaches a lot of people and it's so important, and it's so important to get people like you on to get a varied perspective on what sobriety is and what made that come to a head and stuff like that. It's one of the reasons I ask about social drinking at the start, because there's a variety of different ways of doing sobriety and recovery, and that's important. And I've seen in the past, like with people still do social drinking and they're trying to do other recoveries, like, well, you're not doing crystal meth, that's the main thing. Forget what other people are saying. It's more about what it makes you feel like and where you're at in your recovery. like at the start of your sobriety or at the end of your using, you found the leather community? How did that come about?
Yeah. God, there's a long story. Short version is that I saw someone as a title holder here in Texas. It sparked my interest. I saw the power, saw the visibility, and it just was like, maybe this is where I need to belong. And I reached out to a mentor here in Austin that's pretty well known, and I met up with them, and we had a long conversation. That was about August of 2022. And then I started expressing interest of wanting to be a title holder without even, knowing all the history and everything. But I was adamant about striving for that. And I'm very appreciative for people taking a chance on me and
Hmm.
not, me only having 8 months experience to give me a title. So that's pretty awesome, I guess you can say. Yeah, so I did that, and it seemed so that was August. I'm going to say that maybe I had a relapse around that time, but the last one was in November. And I started to think how people would think of me as a leader and if I was hiding this from people, and that really pushed me through. It was like,
Hmm.
this is now a conflict of who I'm saying I want to be and what I'm doing, and I don't want to be one of those people where it's like, oh, he's a hypocrite or he's not who he is. I don't ever want to be inauthentic. I want to be authentic.
Hmm.
And that is not authentic. So it really was that gave me that boost that I'm not going to stand on this stage as a drug addict. I don't want to win a title and then I relapse. And there's so many consequences to doing drugs now when you're involved in leadership, and the weight is a lot more and the responsibility is a lot more. And that's a dangerous thing to be doing drugs, especially if you're a title holder in a reckless manner. I'm not saying there's a but like me, look, I'm not completely sober. I use marijuana for medicinal reasons. I'm bipolar disorder. I
Hmm.
use marijuana maintenance. That's not for everybody, but that is part of my medical life. So, but if people have issues with that, when I was trying to, or my group survivors, I'm ultimately going to creator that's in the process of creation. We're a social group of a mix of different addictions, and the point is to be supportive and to start recognizing signs of all drugs in the
Hmm.
community, and instead of rejection, being someone in the community can say what's wrong, or my drug addiction was cocaine, but this person's addiction is ketamine. And I learned from survivors that when I see this, and that, that's someone on ketamine. Let me recognize this person. That's what I'm trying to achieve right now.
I think it's important to figure out where are people at and so on. For example, me, I'm citalopram because I suffer anxiety and depression and so on. But it's also comes from a need of like I think 2 years when I went back on it, I literally called my doctor and went, if you don't put me on anti-anxiety meds, I'll real relapse. And that was just the honesty of it. I just couldn't cope with what was going on here. And I'm quite honest about that. And then you have some people where they think recovery, you have to be clear of all drugs, even if they're prescribed. And I was like, no,
Uh,
no, no, no. If you want to help your mental health, there are tools, and I stick very much to what the doctors give me. I don't go outside that, and that's very important to me. But then again, that might be different for someone else. And who am I to judge what works for another person?
and if you're doing drugs or medication, I've been on 8 different medications until I found something. They're not going to work if you're doing drugs. They're going to,
Yeah.
so a lot of people I think are in denial about their own mental health. And, like I said, drugs is going to mask the problem.
After years of using drugs, and when I came off, and I think the first anti-anxiety med I was on was citalopram. No, sorry, sertraline. And when my brain just went quiet, and it was just like, oh, is this how normal people or regular people work? And I was like, I was like, oh, I'm not obsessing about things. I'm not over anxiety about things. And that was just mind blowing that it's like, oh, my brain can be quiet. I didn't know it had that function. I just thought it always had these crazy ideas and thoughts and projecting on other people what they think of me and so on. I'm not saying I'm perfect, Far from it. I still have bad days, but it's just manageable, and I have the tools and I have the language. I think it's important when you have the language to explain how you're feeling, that is half the battle.
I agree.
So you got into the title circuit very quickly. I
Very quick.
was I was only 2 years into fetish when I had my first title. So it's and I was also the second youngest contestant at IML my year. I was
Oh,
20
awesome.
I was 24 when I competed.
Okay.
I competed back.
That was at the age of that was the youngest of our group was 24.
The youngest in our group was 21
Mm.
from a guy from Canada, and he came first runner up.
Wow, yeah.
I came number 23 out of 52. So I was pleased for myself. For a 24-year-old going to Chicago for the first time in his life, first time stateside, I was very proud of myself.
That's
And
awesome.
I had the best time ever. So
Mhm.
how have you found navigating your kink and the title stuff together? Because when you do the title stuff, it's almost non-sex thing because it really doesn't happen when you do all that.
I am more kinky about the intellectual things than the physical things. I don't have a whole lot of fetishes that I'm into, to be honest with you, but I have a lot of respect, family, all kinds of stuff that I can reach out to if I ever want to learn about them,
Hmm.
demos, anything. I have that, and I'm open to that. But like I said, I try to use my sexuality to educate. I try to use sex in a way to get people engaged to think about other things. Like I do the naked reading. It's like, hey, I'm doing this because I want to show you that there are ways to be sexual without having a physical act of sex.
Hmm.
So, and part of Survivor's my sober thing is, don't do kinks unless you're sober, or don't do drugs with kinks if that's the only way you can do them. I do a lot of erotic modeling, erotic content. That's kind of where I put my energy in the hopes that people can see that, and if it improves their life in whatever way. I write erotic poetry. I try to educate through things by writing this eroticism. So I'm not as sexual as people might perceive me to be. But I'm aware that I have very strong sexual energy, but I try to use that in creative ways as possible. So you're more likely to run into me in the classes, the networking, the social events. You're not going to run into me in a dungeon.
And I guess that plays into the whole like you mentioned demisexual and that because that is we've now had a whole talk about asexual here in the UK because the woman we won't mention the name of had to have a go at them as well, besides the trans people, and calling them not right in the head and so on. And it's crazy to me. It's like, well, sex can be a lot of things. I had an ex-boyfriend that very much had the idea if he had a hard date, he had to put it in a hole. And I was just
Yeah.
like, there's more to sex than you putting your dick in my hole. Not that that was bad. It was just like, but there's other things than that. And you talking about doing erotic literature and naked readings and so on. It feels more almost tantric sex kind of vibe to it. I think that's really cool.
So, if I can stand up on stage and say a couple of words and that turns people on, I've done my part. Like I can get satisfaction of turning people on by my voice, my speaking. I don't need anything from that. They say sometimes the best form of self-love is looking at yourself in the mirror. Like I have asexual moments, like, and but that's a whole other conversation.
One last question. You mentioned at the start that you're pan and bi. How have you found navigating the kink scene, which is primarily probably gay or queer? And we do see a lot of bi erasure where it's very much like, well, pick a team, do kind of stuff. That rhetoric, which is nonsense, by the way. But how have you found navigating that?
I learned that people expect to they want to see it in a simplistic way. People don't see me with women in erotic scenes very much. I've worked with lots of trans men. I'm very pro trans and visibility and things like that. I did have someone reach out to me and be like, oh, you're bisexual, you're not showing women. I'm like, who we choose to engage with in sexual nature has nothing to do with our own
Mm.
sexuality. And just because I maybe have not found my niche in working with women more ironically, that doesn't mean that I'm faking being bisexual or anything like that. People want to see you with men and women constantly, and for you to prove your bisexuality. I have this T-shirt. It says that it's got the bisexual flag on it. It says it's not a fucking phase. I've told stories in the past. My sexual coming up, I lost my virginity very young. I was molested. I was, all kinds of things. And my relationship with sex has always been super complicated. And so I find that it's very good to determine if you have sexual traumas because that can lead to a lot of things and addictions and things like that. But I lost my virginity when I was 12. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but it was with a guy. And as I got older, it was just easy with guys. And people were shocked when I say this. I grew up in Louisiana, whenever, a racist state. I dealt more with racial issues because I am on paper black. I am a Creole black man. So I was perceived as white growing up and how I speak, and I was gifted and talented and all of that. So I think that a lot of the more redneck boys that were not as smart as me somehow were enamored with me helping them. I had lots of MAGA type people probably growing up as a kid that made sexual advances towards me. So it just seemed easy. And when I was with women, it felt like I was settling a lot of times because I didn't have that confidence to go for them because I rarely initiated my sexual encounters. They're usually people making the move. And that's true of a lot of it. It was, like I had to learn how not to feel used after sex. And there was just a lot of using.
Mm.
And, the women I dated or the women I have dated, especially when I was younger, there was just this lack of confidence because of my race. I kissed a girl one time when I was in high school, biggest crush on her. Like, I didn't have that confidence because of my race. But we kissed. She told her mom about it. And her mom was like, you better be careful or your lips are going to turn brown. And so, like, that made me insecure.
Mm.
And I didn't have as much confidence in trying to explore my sexuality with women early on. And I have not been sexual as many women as I've been with men. But like I said, I think, and now where I'm, at in my life, I didn't start really having a lot of trans men friends until I got in the leather community, and that really opened up like a whole new door of attraction for me. I mean, just let people be who they are. Like I'm very much attracted. Look, it's any hole is a goal with me. I'm attracted. That's the best way I can put it. That's it. Like I'm not. I don't look at gender. I don't look at sexuality. I can be attracted to just a person.
Mm. And I think that's important, and I think also I'm still learning about what I'm attracted to and who I'm attracted to, and I think the last couple of years it's made me think a lot, and I think that's
You
important.
should be open minded to that. Your attractions, explore with them. Some people are afraid to.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't. I've always kind of been with the opinions like if I was to have sex with a trans man, I don't know how I would react. But then again, I've never been in this situation, so that is a fair comment to go kind of go, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, and that's fair.
And I'm open to it. So it's and I think that's the first step anyway. So we're coming to the end of the episode already. Just two last questions and then like a rounding question. First question is, what is your favorite piece of gear?
I always talk about the leather vest because I like to show off my chest. Or people like me to show off my chest more than I do. So I'm always talking about I do things titties out. So I'm always going to go to my leather vest. So I love that.
Fantastic. And just well, I can't have you sitting bare chested on cam. for an hour and not talk about your tattoos. And
I was like, you're gonna make me
can
get
you
so
tell
mad.
me, because I'm a movie buff and I can see a film role on you, can you tell me a little bit about that?
So, ever since I was a kid, I had close connection to movies. It's just a continual reminder that, one of my artistic hobbies is filmmaking. My degree is in creative writing, actually. So, I'm actually in music video production. I just finished a music video.
Fantastic.
So, film is the preferred medium of how I would like to tell my life, and we're getting there.
Oh, that's fantastic. I really like that. As you can tell, I'm quite a movie buff.
It's
It's
it's a cool way to keep an organization with your tattoos. Like I got some things in this.
oh
That's
yeah.
always fun. And then
And you can
there's
put new things in if you want in the film role.
exactly
That's really cool.
exactly.
And it's a conversation starter.
Yeah, people like always. People always ask me about my tattoos. Always.
Actually, I thought of one last question before we round off. You mentioned your podcast. How did that come about? I know you mentioned you're a very not no nonsense. Let's not throw shade. Let's put throwing light into the world. How did it come about you setting up this podcast?
I was sick of seeing queens and people in the community be shady and uphold that as a value of the community. I just said this is ridiculous. So it started up throwing lights started as like just kind of a meetup group in person. And it was kind of like set up like a help group. And I don't think it really thrived in that setting. And we tried to do Zoom for people to join. And so I was like, look, and this was at the beginning of my title year. I was like, look, I want to do work that I can be very proud of when I step on the IML stage. I need to show I can network. I need to show I can be a leatherman. So I said, you know what? Let's cut the shackles. Let's make this alive that we record and we start working on finding people to make this a global movement. And so I do uphold. I am here in Texas, and I have a really good relationship with all of my leather family here. So I do showcase my own home and state a lot because we are in a more difficult climate. I don't know people in other countries that are watching this. We live in Texas. You can walk around with a handgun. Like there are things that we have to think about that are abnormal and unusual that no other countries ever have to deal with because we deal with mass shootings. It's a normal thing here. People are making it to be normal and it's frightening,
Yeah.
but we have to be fearless. But just know, and I want everybody to be aware of this, we're in danger. I don't know how to, this isn't a joke. I'm not saying this to be saying it. It's scary. And it would be a little bit easier if we were in a different state, but we're in Texas. And I joke all the time about Texas's personality. And I'll put it to you like this: Texas is that loud, obnoxious person in a room full of people that laughs loud, that slaps people on the back all the time. And every time he comes around, you want to move away. And you're like, oh, here comes Texas. That's Texas. Texas is annoying as fuck, y'all. And it's one of the loudest and most ridiculous states in our country. And it's crazy because we have 4 of our 10 largest cities in the country are in the state of Texas that are very blue. So, but it's a big state and it's got a lot of ignorance in it. And it's not, it's, I'm from Louisiana. That is a ignorant red state. It's ignorance is that's the problem. Texas is an arrogant red state. Like they do things to be mean. That's their motivation.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's so I kind of get the sense that you set up the podcast to kind of like, do you know what? We need some positivity in the world, and that's a nice safe space to
Or
promote.
good dialogue, a
Yeah.
dialogue that wasn't that didn't that a non-shady dialogue.
Do you know what? I'm so on your page when it comes to that. I find cattiness and gossip and all that kind of crap. I really, ugh. It's like even like if someone's unhappy with something, then go to the source. Don't get catty on Instagram about it. And I get a little bit.
Oh, that's the worst. Facebook. But
It's
this is the
like dirty laundry is on the clothing line outside. It's not online.
and this is the bigger deal. We're not ever talking about ending these things. We never talk about ending it.
Yeah, it's weird, and I don't want to do a comparison to Drag Race, but the the
Everyone always does. Everything's comparable to Drag Race.
well, the All Stars All Winner season, because there was no shade that season. I love that season. It was just joyous it was to celebrate excellence, and that was it. There was no pinning them against each other. Yes, it was a competition, but it was just, do you know what? At the time that came out, it was just what we needed. We needed positivity instead of, because Drag Race is very much become this thing where the meaner you can be, the more noticed you get. And I don't like that.
The fandom of Drag Race is horrible,
Oh,
and
oh yes.
I actually hold RuPaul responsible for that. I am not just blindly following. I love drag, and I love to see people getting drag. But I think as someone that claims to be a mother of the community and drag community, you need to talk to the community of fans and worry about your contestants' mental health because she never says anything about that. And so I'm not someone to come to that. Just I love what RuPaul was when all this started, but who RuPaul is now is not the same person.
Oh yeah, it's become a beast, commercial
And
beast.
we are hurting people. We're hurting people in our community and causing mental health issues, and she's not addressing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone has watched or listened and they've really connected with anything you've said or some of your experience, or they want to reach out, where can they get a hold of you?
The easiest thing is to follow me on Instagram. LTJ is here. That's going to give you the shebang you want. If you're interested in more of my erotic stuff, you can send me a message. I can tell you how to do that. I'm getting ready to do a live new drawing in 3 weeks. So if you guys want to draw me naked, that's up to it. But I'm getting ready for IML right now. Just preparing for International Mr. Leather. I was contestant #1 last year, and I wanted to take initiative to make a reunion for us. So I will be there and cheering on the new class, IML Class 47.
Yeah. When this comes out, it's just past and gone. But yeah,
I was
I.
trying to be so good not to date the episode when I was like,
Oh yeah, yeah. But it's gonna
not to
come.
use
It's
date.
gonna come after. It's fine. It's fine. It's anything that's pre-recorded. It's gonna be bits and pieces. The world might end before this episode comes.
That's true. It might. It just might.
Uh, so,
Who
but yeah,
knows?
it was also one of the reasons we wore our medals today is just marking that IML is coming up, and I'm so excited for my friend Stefan, who's going to be competing as Mr. London Lever. So I'm
Yay.
very, very excited. He was one of my guests on season 2. Had major technical issues, and it turned out his phone didn't support Instagram Live.
No. Yes, I had to stop Instagram Live because my photos were causing me to get my rights taken away. So I had to
Yeah.
move away from Instagram Live. I do. I'm trying to get better, but you will see me pushing pushing the envelope on my Instagram with my modeling. I don't. The only thing you can't see on my Instagram is my penis.
And that's that. Yeah, that will get you banned very, very
You
quickly.
see everything
Uh,
else though. You can see the backside.
yeah, and I've seen the pictures. I'm not complaining.
All
Uh,
right.
but thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you
It's
so
been
much.
a joyous first episode of this season, so I really thank you for coming and sharing your experience.
Thank you so much for having me on season 9.
So that was TJR Reads and talking about his experience, his aspirations, well, where he came from, and how his fetish stories going on from there. And this is the first episode of season 9. That's crazy to me that we are at season 9 as a little project that started in COVID time now on season 9 of this podcast. So I'm looking forward to a brand new season. I have 7 more guests lined up, and there's going to be an array of different experiences, different backgrounds, and a lot of them this season are actually in person, which is great. So, but it's been absolute joy to have my first guest, LTJ Reads, on for the first episode, and it's been absolutely amazing, and I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.
And remember, y'all, if you're not throwing light, you're not acting right.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much.